as a reporter, I really hated reading off of a teleprompter. Like, I was like, this isn't where I feel connected. Journalism is also, I think it's a public service first and foremost. The way that we engage with one another is actually through curiosity and question asking. I've never actually been somebody to tell people what to think. That's also how I was always taught, is like, there's no loss in giving.
Never Work a Day talks to folks that are pivoting their lives to follow their passions. We talk about pitfalls, misadventures, hilarious and heartbreaking, meet the outstanding individuals, and learn about their continuing journey. I'm your host, Nikki Frankel, purveyor of platforms and creator of play spaces, and I'm so excited to bring you the stories of these extraordinary individuals.
Welcome to Never Work a Day. This week, we're featuring Noor Tagouri. Noor grew up in a conservative town in Maryland. She was inspired by the power of storytelling to connect, heal, and shape community. In her early career, she interned at CBS Radio, working at CTV News, and joining Newsy as an anchor and producer. Her documentary series for Hulu and companion podcast Sold in America, Inside Our Nation's Sex Trade, was awarded a Gracie's Award for Best Investigative Series. She founded At Your Service, a media company that focuses on questioning representation and centering on marginalized voices. Their motto is story first, medium second. Noor launched her Webby-nominated investigative series, Rep, a story about the stories we tell, in partnership with iHeartMedia. Rep explores the concepts of misrepresentation and objectivity in U.S. media. Noor has given keynotes around the world, including TEDx, South by Southwest, Cannes Lions. As a storytelling consultant, she's worked with top brands like Prada, Valentino, and Google. Noor Tagouri is an award-winning journalist, producer, and public speaker. We're so happy to talk to her. Please welcome Noor Tagouri. Noor, it's great to see you. I'm so glad that we're talking.
Me too, Nikki. I'm so happy to see you again.
Nice to see you too. The last time I saw you was at a conference and you just shook the house and everybody applauded. And it was very inspiring.
Yeah, it was our World Media Congress, and we spoke on the rise of the independent journalist and storyteller. And it's so wild because that was in May, and we're recording this now in approaching October, and so much has happened that is relevant to that topic.
I know.
So has happened, and it just feels like the media landscape is changing minute by minute.
All the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And now more than ever. And that's why that conversation was necessary. For reference on that too, that conference is for news companies to attend to figure out how to stay in the game, as it were. Just for people that don't know what the content was of that. And I was so inspired by your story because I was so excited because I think like a lot of people, we're starting to feel super numb to whatever news is coming out there because there's just so much of it. And it felt good that somebody was really trying to do a service.
Thank you for seeing that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important because I'm always keen on sharing just from my own journey because I became an independent journalist not necessarily by choice, but because that was the path that I kept being pushed onto, and being in traditional newsrooms wasn't the right fit at the time. For so much of my career, I covered my hair, I wore hijab, and that was it was really hard to just stay in a traditional news space with that called into question all the time. And so I learned how to really self-investigate, and also how to pursue this path of independent storytelling. And now seeing everything transition and more momentum being put behind independent storytelling, I'm like, oh, of course this is happening, because the way that the traditional system was set up was it was inevitable that it was going to lead to this collapse, because we were holding on too tight to false notions of objectivity and how we wanted people to show up.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly. So I think I think we are experiencing right now a bit of it's cracking wide open, but I think we always sort of knew that. I'm wondering though, you said as a bit of your journey, you were kind of brought into journalism, you were kind of, it kept on, being in your path. So how did that keep on happening? Was it accidental? Did you find interest? Yeah.
Well, journalism in particular, I mean, since I was 3 years old, I incessantly was always asking questions, and eventually my dad was like, there's a name for like what it is that you love to do. It's called journalism. And I just knew that that's like the path that I wanted to take. Was I wanted to become a journalist. I wanted to eventually like have my own show, like adjacent to the Oprah show, where I was asking people questions and holding space for very vulnerable, big stories, because that's just how I moved through the world. That's how I like lived my life. And then when I was about 15 years old, I decided to start wearing the hijab. And at the same exact time, I got my first job at a newspaper. And so I felt like, because this path kept continuously opening up for me, that I was just going to be super, super determined to break the barrier of becoming the first woman in a hijab to be on American television as a reporter, as a news anchor. And the path wasn't to be the first for the sake of being the first. It was because I just was relentless in this dream and I didn't want to give it up. And I would happen to be that. So I was very vocal at the time about that dream and about pursuing this path and connecting with people. And then I was telling my own stories along the way. I had mentors who taught me how to self-produce. And as I was gaining a public platform at a very young age, I was also, working at radio stations and then working at television stations, and I was soaking up all of this knowledge, but I had always carried a camera and a tripod around to report on stories, and then I would upload them onto YouTube and social media. And so that was kind of the first taste into independent journalism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, were you turned off of sort of conventional modes of journalism? Were you, I mean,
Mm,
from your experience of it, because I think a lot of what what I find interesting about people's journeys is just how sometimes the things that were thrown in front of them the obstacles were really actually opportunities to do something completely different that is more
totally.
fulfilling,
Yeah.
and I think the obstacles are important to talk about because I think people don't always see them as a way to just problem solve, figure out how to get yourself in a space where you're being authentic and it's okay to keep
Yeah.
on working.
I think that I held on for a while around this dream of becoming, like, working for a commercial news station or a network news station, for a very long time. And then I quickly became disillusioned because I realized that, like, I started noticing the patterns of how, people started reading news off of wire feeds and they were being like told what to say. And I had had this dream of being a news anchor for a very long time. And then I realized when I first anchored um, at the local station that I worked at as a reporter, I really hated reading off of a teleprompter. Like, I was like, this isn't where I
Yeah.
feel connected. I felt connected on the ground, talking to people and being in the community. And so I remember having like a little bit of a challenging feeling around that, where I was like, whoa, this dream that I like vocalized so loudly, I'm like tasting it right now and it's not actually what I want to do. And am I allowed to change my mind? And of course I am, and of course I did. Um and so I ended up actually quitting my local TV job and pursuing like my first self-produced documentary about this asylum that housed people with intellectual disabilities. That was one of the worst cases of medical abuse in U.S. history. And my news director wouldn't let me produce a story around it. So I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to do the story myself. And I have no idea what was going to happen after that. But I really believed in it. I dedicated months to this, to producing this. And I was probably 20 at the time, 20-ish.
Yeah.
And put it out. And then right after that, I was offered a job to help start a documentary team at a digital news outlet. And this is also like, this is like peak social media, digital news, um, just era. And so I did that. And then my partner Adam reached out to collaborate on like a clothing line. And so I started expanding, just like, whoa, what would it look like to tell stories through this medium of clothing and fashion that I loved, but like with an actual message. And so it really started expanding the definition of story for me, and like where and how we can
Yeah.
engage with that.
Yeah. I mean, and you started at your service, which is, do you
Mhm.
feel, I mean, journalism is a service, right? Storytelling
Yeah,
is a
of course.
service.
And service journalism is also something that I think I really do believe in. Like I think it's a public service first and foremost. And
Yeah.
I think that that's part of the frustration that people are
Well, it's been
experiencing right now.
challenged, right? It's being challenged that it's that, right? These
Yeah, and
days.
also there's a lot of propaganda. Like there's
Yeah,
also like now people and I think just like you can read and listen to a story and you can like watch how they use language or they weaponize language or they where they choose to put certain facts about the story at the top of the story or at the bottom of the story where they know no one's going to really read it. Like we're seeing this kind of manipulation in live time and I think that what's been so important with at your service and with also just my approach is transparency in our process. And so it's like I love to talk about not just doing the reporting, but also reporting on the journey of the
yeah,
reporting. And that is definitely a flavor. Like it's not for everyone. But it's just how I always ended up telling stories to begin with. And it's really how I garnered trust with the community that I was building who were consuming the stories I was producing.
yeah. I mean, did you find, you don't, do you find that the media, I mean, it's not really neutral anymore, correct? I mean, it's sort of like,
It's never been.
it's never been neutral.
It's never been, and that was like that was like a lie that was told to us and sold to us so that we could aspire to this like sense of objectivity that was like if that was curated by a very specific type of person, which overwhelmingly tended to be like older cis white men
Yeah,
because those are the people who are mostly running the newsrooms and the media networks. And so if that person thinks that this story is important or isn't important, then that in itself is a bias because they're
correct.
choosing what is more important or what is less important. And I don't think that there's like I think that what we need more of is just transparency in that.
Do
And
you, but if
and
you,
also humility in that.
so do you think there was ever transparency, or you think there's more for it now because we're actually seeing how it's made, that everyone can, there's stories, so many different stories out there. There's so much more ability to rule the medium. I guess
Yeah.
anyone can jump in and tell a
I think there's more
story.
access to
Yeah.
transparency now.
Yeah.
And even still, we need media literacy around how to now choose uh who we trust as our story as our news sources.
Right.
So I think that like even if there's more transparency now, there's just more information now than there ever has been before, which I think is also why people are really holding on to independent storytelling and journalism because they're like this person has like done the work to earn my trust. This person actually like cites their sources. This person is transparent in how they change their mind when more information is introduced. But for the most part, I mean, and I ask this a lot at like events too when I'm speaking, there's so many like it's especially with young people, if you ask them, do you wholeheartedly and fully trust any traditional or legacy media outlet or news outlet, hands rarely come up.
Yeah.
People are like, they're starting to kind of see through that. And so I think that that's part of the revolution around media and journalism right now is like, who are the people who are telling us, like, who are reporting and who are telling us stories because they care about truth and integrity and asking ourselves, like, what is the role that we play in this versus trying to push an agenda
Of
or,
course.
some type of way of being and thinking.
Well, there's the transparency piece that's coming through, and then also there's kind of the rise of antitrust and fascism and what have you coming
Mhm.
everywhere, everywhere. um, and so everything is sort of under attack, right? Any kind of thoughts we had about there being one source or any information, I think everything is under investigation at the moment. I think
Yeah.
everything is being analyzed and broken down. I mean, and in that situation, then you start following people that are, it goes sort of back to, do you worry that people follow you because they're like minded to you? What do you feel like is the way to combat the antitrust that's happening? And how do you actually say that you can trust me that these stories, I mean, what are the methods that we can use?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, something that I've really been leaning into right now as I've just been observing how people are engaging with their platforms as storytellers and journalists, is that I'm noticing there is still this notion of telling people how to think and what to think. And sorry, telling people what to think. And I'm actually more interested in showing people how to critically think by showing people how they can ask themselves questions no matter whenever they do receive a story. And so whether those are questions about what is the language that is being used here, are they being transparent in how they're defining that language? How do you define that language? Do you have any feelings or ties to this story um, that you also are open to investigating? And then is the person that you're receiving this story from or this news from, how long have they been reporting on it? And are they regurgitating opinions, or are they like stating facts and then they're giving you space to think for yourself?
Yeah, that's a lot of information. I mean, we can almost turn that into a AI filter or something like that if we wanted
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Honestly, I think about that a lot.
Because I think we all want that information. We all want to know where it's coming from for the most part. And then once we're there and we're comfortable, I definitely have my partner watches a lot of YouTubers talk about the Ukraine all the time, all day long on YouTube, and he's following these influencers. And I know a lot of other people that go down this sort of way. And do you have an audience as well that follows your work and that follows what you do? Right? What do you feel about the influencers versus what you're doing, and sort of the news
Yeah.
influencers, or are you on? Yeah, I'm curious about.
I've been asking myself this question, and I just have been really observing right now and seeing, and I've pulled back, I think, as the rise of news influencers and the louder people have been getting about feeling like they're commentating on everything that is happening. I've been in this place of observation and seeing um what is the actual role of journalism and what are the questions that we should be asking ourselves right now. And I can get sucked into, the YouTube rabbit hole sometimes of like, what are people saying and piecing together about this one story? Or I want to like watch all of these videos to understand how people think about this one thing. But I, the audience that I've built that has really turned into such a powerful community with At Your Service, I really appreciate how the way that we engage with one another is actually through curiosity and question asking. I've never actually been somebody to tell people what to think. That's never been my just ammo. And also, because I do have this also internal uh, compass of, I was traditionally trained in journalism. So there is a part of me that still carries this like objectivity sense of, I don't want to be a commentator. I want to provide information and stories, but right now I think what really actually needs to be provided more than anything is actually questions, and like showing people how to ask themselves the harder questions, because what I'm seeing a lot of is lack of accountability and asking ourselves like, what is the role that we play in this problem? And I think about this because I was actually talking to my mom about this morning, where somebody that I know, there's like a bunch of people who are just like making TikToks about this person, um, calling them all of these names and like really going after them for like something that they may have said. They said like 15 years ago, and it was such a wild thing because this thing had gone viral and people had already made commentary and there was already an apology almost 6 years ago. But
Okay.
it's coming back and it's happening all over again. And I'm just like, wait, this is actually so wild, because like, one, it becomes just material for this type of information becomes material for people to make more content.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
because rage and hate is what is often amplified more than anything else, now you have to really be able to filter through and see how your time is being wasted and how people are trying to manipulate you. And it's really frustrating too, I think, because when I have this conversation with people in real life or even just virtually in a group setting, the frustration is everybody has it. Everybody's like, I'm sick of this. Like, why does everybody feel like they can say something about everything? And like, it's just too much. It's getting too much. It's getting too much. And then, but like, then you go on to these algorithm based apps and you still see people push it, they're just like talking for the sake of talking and for making more content.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a bit of that fatigue that's happening. So, in light of that, what are your favorite mediums in connecting with your community? Do you feel you're doing town
Yeah.
halls, which are great?
Yes.
And I think important. I think we should be all doing them all the time because the world's on fire. But I think, what do you like? I mean, is it feel like, because the medium is the message, right? At the end of the day, it always goes back to that.
Exactly. And we've been really, really committed to gathering people,
Yeah.
whether it's virtually or in person, off of algorithm-based apps and bringing people together. So we host our monthly At Your Service clubs every Sunday for 2 hours. And we have people from dozens and dozens of countries gather, often expert-led, to talk about a very specific thing. So our next club is actually about death. And the question I'm exploring is like calling in people who are curious about exploring what happens after we die, but really asking the questions of how is our fear of death impeding on our capacity
lives.
to love. Yeah, and because sometimes for me right now, what I find is really important is zooming out. Is so we can like sit there and we can talk about current events all day, every day. And so many people are doing that. And I think it's really powerful and it's great. Some people are doing it really, really well. Right now, I'm more interested in what it looks like to zoom out and witness the patterns of why we are speaking from a place of fear. Why are we speaking from a place of rage? And so if I were to break down why are we speaking from a place of fear, what I'm going to get to is because the ultimate fear is like, people don't really know what's going to happen after we die. And so then they kind of move from that place of fear and they move from whatever that belief might be, whether there is a belief there or not. Subconsciously, it's like always there. So I'm curious getting to that.
I think that's a lot of the reason why people have religion or bring it back into their lives if they want it, because then there's some hope of something being there at the end of the day.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things you can dig in with that, but I do feel like if we find the roots of a lot of our fears and a lot of our concerns, then that tells us a lot about ourselves and then will make us ultimately more empathetic to the stories of other people, right?
Totally.
Which is, I think, kind of what it's all about. Do you feel like these sort of clubs and the meetings, do you feel like in person that people really seeing each other outside of a screen, which is how I always like talking to people? I mean, I incidentally, I'm an event producer, but I also do feel like bringing people together is helpful, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's not just helpful, it's so transformative. We just took part in a retreat that gathered different artists and activists and creatives, just for a couple of, even when it's like 2 days long, if you're able to bring, even if it's one town hall, even if it's one dinner party, if you're able to bring people together and have them put away their phones and look each other in the eye, the work that you're able to do in just one of those sessions and one of those engagements is so powerful. But you have, and you know this, you're an amazing event producer. You have to be so intentional with how you gather people.
Yeah.
So if you're going to gather people and it's just going to be panel after panel after panel and there's no room for curiosity or building or whatever it is, or true connection, and that's not curated for you, you're not going to get the same impact.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually also what people are like, what I've been watching is like seeing how people are re-envisioning what it means to gather.
Yeah, I think we have to. Because I think the old methods of communication, I think we're all breaking down. And so there needs to be more ways for us to all feel comfortable around each other. Do you feel like, what are you working on right now? A million things? What are you working on?
Yeah. So right now we have our upcoming club. So we have Death Club. Then in November we have
Is that virtual?
a writing club.
Death Club?
Yeah.
Is it virtual?
So it's virtual, 2 hours on Sundays for 3 Sundays, and then November we'll have a writing club on Sundays as well.
Cool.
And then I'm also writing. I'm writing a book right now on self-investigation and revolutionary representation, which is a concept that I came up with in my last investigative series, which was a series that examined how the misrepresentation of Muslims, Arabs, and other people actually in American media, how misrepresentation has shaped American culture and society as a whole. It's actually so super, super relevant. I ended up teaching it as a university course. And it's really revolutionary representation itself is about how do we engage with stories, knowing that stories are alive and that the people in those stories are constantly evolving and that you are constantly evolving. And so how do we engage with the aliveness of a story and the changes that are inevitable? And how does that make us detach ourselves from like trying to control and commentate on everything? Because we actually don't know if this person has changed their mind, if it's been 2 days or if it's been 20 years. Like, I really want to get back to just holding curiosity more deeply than holding conviction.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
in such a hard way.
Yes. Yeah. Curiosity should come back a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of missing because we think we know everything.
Yeah, totally.
That series was quite amazing, the investigative series.
Thank
Are you
you.
going to be doing more of that? Is that kind of what?
So Rep was a limited series I created as a body of work to teach from.
Yeah.
We might have a surprise episode that might come out later this year. And right now we're really focusing on, we have a couple of series that we're working on that are really about what it means to turn your questions inward, what it means to be able to have the capacity and the courage to ask yourself anything. And so I'm really interested in moving from that place of just like getting people to care more about what's happening within them and taking accountability and responsibility for that.
Yeah. Well, and seeing that, because that's a lot of how you consume. It's interesting because it's, when you talk about storytelling, I just think it's an interesting new way to think about it, because I think a lot of people tell stories and they say they're storytellers. But what does that actually mean? And I think a lot of it for me is around the objectivity or the object of what you're trying to get across in a lot of ways.
Yeah, storyteller is such an interesting term that people. I think about that a lot.
It's a broad term. You also do you have a nonprofit with your mom?
Yeah. Yes, we do. We have a
Yeah.
nonprofit called ICU. And we've run this initiative since I was 12 years old. We were originally working with a shelter for survivors of domestic violence, and we were doing like these toiletry drives and grocery runs, and then it became a lot more expansive, and we started doing like winter care packages for just people experiencing homelessness. And now ICU is an actual food pantry and community pantry in the DC area. So we are constantly like, just there's family food bags for people in the community, for refugee families, and then constantly giving out care packages and winter care packages for people who are unhoused. And it's been, I mean, service is such an integral part in just how I was raised. And so I've always really loved that because it started out because of the audience, the community and the audience that I was creating. They funded it. Like I would just post about like these good deed opportunities, and there would be somebody who needed a pair of glasses, or there are these, the shelter needed a specific item or like refrigerator or something like that. And we would post about these things, and then people would immediately just give, and they trusted us so deeply. And so it's crazy to know that I'm turning 32. So it's been 20 years since we've been doing this type of work.
Really? So it's
That's
still in
crazy.
existence, and it still is running.
I'm literally going home this week, and I'll be
So
going
people
to the pantry.
can donate and check in on it, and cool. We'll make sure people can do that.
Thank you.
Because of course, thank you. I mean, it's rare that you talk to I haven't heard the term of somebody being at service or doing things of service. It's not something I'm hearing about in my daily life. That's maybe just me, or maybe I'm just not. Maybe whatever is being consumed, and I think the lens of that is refreshing, and it shouldn't be maybe, but it is.
I think it's our responsibility. I mean, at your service, like, is also just like rooted in that, because I really believe that like that is like the big honor and like the purpose of life. I think one of them can be being of service to yourself and to others and those around you. And I see you specifically. I mean, even the name of the foundation was in response. One time we were giving out care packages in a park, and there was this couple, this older couple, and my mom went up to them and she asked them, like, hey, what do you guys need so that we can be more intentional with what we put in these care packages? And she just, like, the older woman just, like, grabbed my mom by the shoulders and she said, we just need to be seen. And I see you, the name really solidified in response to that woman of just like, okay, yes,
Yeah.
I see you. And that, I think, is just such a core value of mine and of my family's in general, of like, what does it mean to really see people? And then if you're going to take that into your work as a doctor or a guidance counselor or a lawyer or a storyteller or a journalist, there's always a way that value can actually make you better at what you do, because there's then you deepen connection and you really actually show up.
Yeah, you really provide service by your being
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
And there's no loss in that. That's
No.
also how I was always taught, is like there's no loss in giving.
No. Yeah, it's just, yeah. It's not everyone thinks to do it first, and it's a good thing to do because you actually get a million returns from it, as it turns out.
Totally.
Totally. Oh, yay. Well, something we usually ask, we ask what anyone of our guests is consuming. That could be food, that could be media, that could be watching, it could be anything. Do you have a couple things you're personally or professionally consuming at the moment? This is like at the end where they ask what books you like, but I'm broadening the range a little bit.
Yeah, we're reading a lot of books right now. I'm like wondering if I should do like books, TV show, food.
Whatever's the most fun thing that you're obsessed with today.
The show that I go to, that it's like my go-to that I really love, is like this adult animation called The Midnight Gospel.
Okay, I know what that show is.
Love. The Midnight Gospel is like, it's a cartoon that's like actually a spiritual podcast that really delves into like the purpose of life and what happens after we die, and in this really weird and beautiful way. So that's something that I'm definitely consuming actively. And then I've been reading Cole Arthur Riley's This Here Flesh, and I actually just got a beautiful book package from a journalist from Gaza called, her name is Plestia, and she wrote a book called Plestia, The Eyes of Gaza. And that book is like, I'm really excited to delve into it because she constantly was documenting her diary entries. So she would write her diary entries and post it. And so the book is it's a book of her diary entries post October, and it's gotten such great reviews. So I'm excited to delve into that.
That's very exciting. We can put these in links, and we can make sure people also know what you're talking about and spread the word.
Love it.
Well, have a lovely rest of your day. It was so good to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is like a very potent, clear conversation. I'm very happy that we had it.
Yeah, it's so nice to talk to you. Thanks for listening. I'm Nikki Frankel saying, if you do what you love, you never work a day. If you want to see what we're doing, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and join the conversation on the Discord. Take care of yourself and those around you. Never Work a Day is produced by Preview Media. Producers are Gina Bouchard, Eleni Simos, and Stefan Vloshky. Our editor is Jasmine Jackson. See you soon.